Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our File Sync webinar. So today we've got an agenda of around 30 minutes where we're going to look at some industry challenges around data integration. We're then going to look at some use cases where our customers purchase File Sync. I'm then going to pass you over to my colleague Stuart, who's going to do a demonstration. And then if you've got any questions, you may be able to see in the live chat. Feel free to enter your questions in there and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. Now, I just want to kick things off with a poll. Okay, so just to see some interaction, just to see some engagement there. Hopefully you can now see that poll on the screen. So it's just a quick question. Do you currently use the Autodesk Construction Cloud or BIM 360? Great, we're getting some feedback there. Quite a few of you are using the Autodesk Construction Cloud already. Good. Interesting. Okay. Let me remove that. So a lot of you may have seen this slide before, and I think what this shows is the fact that in the industry today, there is a lot of technology available to us. And this is great on one side because it gives us the tools that we need to do the job. But on the other side, it can cause us a challenge because we have all of these tools and data can often be siloed, documents can often be trapped. We may need to pay unnecessary license fees in order for certain people to get access to information. Now, when you look at some of the challenges in the industry today around data integration, there's a few alarming stats. 54% of construction projects experience delays due to poor data integration. 52% of construction professionals cite a lack of real-time data as a major hurdle to effective decision-making. And the average decrease in productivity, roughly 20%, is a result from insufficient data and file collaboration. Which is why here at Graitec, we're investing heavily into this space, and we've created a dedicated solution line called Data Connect, which is all about connecting systems and data. Now, we do that through our dedicated apps. Today, we're talking about File Sync, but just to let you know, we have a product in the market called ERP Sync as well. Now, in the poll, quite a few of you are using the Autodesk Construction Cloud, which is great. And within there is a module called Cost Management. Now, if you want to sync financial data from cost management to your accounting ERP system and vice versa, our ERP Sync product does exactly that. It automates the data transfer from ERP to Autodesk Build, from Autodesk Build back to ERP. And then we underpin this with our integration services team. So you may have a data bottleneck, a solution doesn't necessarily exist, or an integration doesn't necessarily exist. So speak to our integrations team. We can look to understand your challenges and to see if any solutions or a solution can be created. So File Sync. Why File Sync? Well, when we talk to our customers, we break it down into 4 key pillars. This is why our customers will purchase File Sync, whether they need to migrate data, whether they want to improve and collaborate with their data, do backups of their data, or improve compliance. So let's delve into migrate and talk about what we mean. So a good example is you may be a customer that has just purchased the Autodesk Construction Cloud and you've got a lot of data there sat on your Windows system that you need to move in. You could have a large volume of data, and to do this manually is going to take time, logging in, setting up the folders, making sure that the files have all moved across, validating that. So many of you want to automate this process. The next case scenario where File Sync is of use is, collaboration. Still to this day, communication is very much fragmented, and we still see email dominate that. We saw earlier on that there's a lot of technology out there in the marketplace, but how easy is it to access these disparate systems? Now, version control has always been a challenge, and we know that if we send the wrong version of a document, that's going to potentially lead to confusion. So how do we ensure that all stakeholders, whether they're internal or external, are all aligned and working to the latest information? And then we have backups. A lot of the conversations that we're having around file sync is to do with backups. So do you have any concerns in terms of managing backups across a multitude of diverse different data sources? Do you have any concerns that your cloud storage applications can go down? And this is not uncommon, this is not unheard of, that from time to time, cloud storage can go down. So what is the impact going to be on your business? What is the impact going to be on your design engineers that potentially can't get access to the files, or more importantly, can't get access to the latest information? And with manual backup processes, there is an increase of data loss. When was the last time that backup was done? Are you doing the backups regularly? Do you have the right process in place to ensure that your data that's in that cloud system is also in a different location so you can easily get access to that? And then finally, we have compliance. Okay, so how do you ensure that teams are working to industry-specific standards? ISO 19650, some elements of that may dictate how you share information. So how do you control that? More importantly, how do you demonstrate that you've adhered to the regulatory requirements? Can you quickly create an audit? Can you correctly create reports that shows what's happened, when, by who? And then how do you control file access and file sharing? So we've discussed 4 use cases there, whether you're looking to migrate data into a new cloud system, whether you're looking to improve collaboration internally or externally, whether you're looking to do backups or whether you're looking to improve compliance. And this is really where Graitec File Sync comes into play. Okay, so our solution enables you to quickly authenticate and connect these different storage systems, where you can configure how to sync on a demand, hourly, daily, overnight. Our software then goes and does the legwork. So Graitec File Sync does the synchronizations. And then at the backups, you've got that peace of mind that you've got an up-to-date backup that should the inevitable happen, should the cloud storage, whatever happens there, you can continue to work. File Sync supports Autodesk Construction Cloud, Autodesk Docs, BIM 360. We support SharePoint, Procore, OneDrive, and we support Windows. Now, the benefits are straightforward. We're connecting those systems together, and this will grow. As File Sync grows, we will add more and more integrations into that. So it's all about connecting these ecosystems. It's all about automating that process, to stop manually having to sign in, navigate to the folder, upload the files, download the files. File Sync does that for you. It improves that collaboration internally and externally. Now, when it comes to internally, do you necessarily have to buy licenses for everybody just to get access to files? Or can you sync those files out of one location and put them into an easily shared location? And then finally, we've got compliance. Okay, how can you just ensure some of the protocols? If you've got to follow any of the standards, how do you ensure that you're following that? So before I pass you over to Stuart to do a demonstration of the File Sync application, I'm just going to show another quick poll. Of the 4 use cases that we've just gone through, which one do you feel is more relatable to you? So are you looking to migrate? Are you looking to improve collaboration? Do you want to do your backups? Or is compliance the number one factor there? interesting. We can see collaborate is coming out tops, quickly followed by backups. Good. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to pass you over to Stuart. Stuart is going to run through a short demonstration of our software to see how intuitive it is to use. Again, if you've got any questions, I'll do my best to go through some of the live chat as he's presenting. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Gary. So, morning, everyone. So as Gary said, I'm going to take you through a few examples. The examples are framed around the challenges that Gary was talking about. So I'm not going to put my presentation into full screen because I'm going to be going between a couple of windows. So to start with, we're going to go through our first example, which is migrate. So we'll demonstrate how File Sync can facilitate migration of data. In this example, we're looking to migrate a project from SharePoint to Autodesk Docs. Part of the requirement that's come from the customer is they need to run this migration after hours because they want to minimize any impact on users. And additionally, there's a period of time where not all users are going to be transitioned to this new platform. So it could be days or weeks before they get everyone across. And they need any new or modified files from SharePoint over this period of time to be synced across automatically. And we can do that using File Sync. So before we go through File Sync itself, I just want to explain a couple of windows that I've got on screen. So on the left, we have SharePoint, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And I have a project that I want to migrate. On the right, we've got Autodesk Docs, and we have an empty project where I need to migrate the data to. And we're going to use File Sync to achieve that. So File Sync application, as Gary said, is really simple to use. To get up and running, it's a 3-step process. The first thing that we would do is create a connection. So all a connection is, it's about establishing the system that we want to sync data between. So in this example, I'm choosing from our list Autodesk Build. I'm logging in. So we have a familiar interface when logging into Autodesk, our Autodesk account. We're authorizing our application to exchange data, and then we're choosing our hub in the case of Autodesk. So once I've confirmed those details, it's as simple as that. Our connection has been created. It automatically names it based on the system and the hub that we're connecting to, and we can change all this information to whatever suits us best. You'll see that we already have several connections already in place to various systems. We actually have multiple in this example to the Construction Cloud. So once you've got a connection in place, step 2 is to create a project. So a project is essentially just a workspace, somewhere to store the various syncs that you want to create. So we're going to create sync for migration, a project for migration, and we're going from SharePoint to ACC. So one of the requirements that we talked about was we needed to automate synchronization, and we wanted to do it out of hours. So with File Sync, we can schedule, which means we can automate. We can specify the days that we want the sync to run on, the time that we want it to run. So one of the requirements was it needs to be out of hours, so we could kick it in at 1 a.m. And we only want this to run daily. It doesn't need to too frequently sync data. So I've got it running every 24 hours. So once we have a project, the third step is to create a sync. So all a sync is our synchronization config. Where are we going from? Where are we going to? And what do I want the product? What do I want File Sync to do? So I'm going from SharePoint. So I choose my connection that we created before. We can search for the project. So we have a lot of projects within SharePoint. And if we have a specific folder, in this case, we've got several projects and we know which project we want. We can also choose various settings once we've established what we're syncing. I'm going to include everything under that project directory. And then on the right-hand side, it's just a case of repeating that process. So regardless of connection, it's always the same process for creating a sync. So it's easy to use and understand. We can again search for the project because we have several hundred in our ACC platform, and we can choose where we want to copy to. And again, we have parameters on the right hand side where we're going syncing to the destination. So one of the requirements was we need to copy modified or new files, so we can facilitate that with this copy option. So with that sync in place, we could obviously wait for this to be triggered automatically. So you don't have to be at the software. You can close the application down. It will run in the system tray. You could even sign out of the application. It will still trigger the schedule. Or you can run it on demand. So let's put it on the left. So on the right, we've got Autodesk Docs. And if I just click this play button, it will initiate the sync. So if we're in the software and we want to track what's happening, we have a real-time monitor, which is called the activity page. So this is just a real-time ticker showing you everything that File Sync is doing. So it's reading the source, checking what files and folders are there. It's reading the destination and checking what's at the destination location. And it'll start building all the file folders and files. So once it's completed, we get a notification. So you won't see that on your screen because I've got multiple screens. And the activity log will also tell us essentially how many files were synced, how long it took. So we get this real-time activity log that we can view, and we can see all the files and folders have been synced across. So one of the other requirements we talked about was that if in SharePoint we add some new files or we modify any files, we need them to be synced across. So let's go ahead and just create some new documents in SharePoint. And this often answers a question that we see come up a lot about how data is synced, how much data is synced every time we run. So we have some new files in SharePoint, and we can see that in Docs, that folder is currently empty. And let's go and run this again. So we could wait for the schedule to kick in or run it manually. Now, because we've chosen incremental as our copy option, what that means is rather than having to synchronize all the files again, it will check the source and destination. It will work out if there are the same files, and if there are any changes, it will update the file. If there are any new files, it will copy the new files. So we're not having to sync everything again, essentially. So we're reducing the amount of data usage. So once this kicks in, you'll see it will shoot through the tasks because it's skipping all of the files, and it's, in this case, only uploading 2 of the documents because there are only 2 files that are either new or modified. And we can see the files are now populated in Docs. So we've been able to migrate that project, we've been able to run it after hours, and we've been able to sync new and modified files from SharePoint to Docs to facilitate any data that's being created whilst people migrate across to that new system. The second example is framed around collaboration. So in this example, we need to collaborate specific files. So we want to be quite targeted in the data that we're syncing. We don't want to give them the whole project. We want to be very specific. And we need to share it with a stakeholder that's using Procore, so another platform. We need to automatically share this data with the customer, but much more frequently, not every day, but as frequently as possible. And the stakeholder also needs visibility to change. So they don't want to just see the latest change, they need to see all the changes that have occurred on a document. And again, we can facilitate this using File Sync. So once again, before we start, we've got a couple of windows. So we're using the same project as before, but this time we want to be very specific. We have a specific folder to sync, and on the right we have Procore, and we want to go into this subcontractor folder. So back in File Sync, we're going to create another project. So you don't necessarily have to create multiple projects at all. You could contain multiple syncs within a single project if you needed to. So if all of these tasks were related to one operation, then we could keep it all in the same thing. Same as before, we want to be able to automate that synchronization of data, and start time's irrelevant, but we want it to be frequent. So we can run intervals as low as 15 minutes, which means every 15 minutes it's going to perform a sync. So it's going to check for new or modified files and then sync them across. Same as before, we just need to set up our config. So we're choosing our project, our connection, our project, and potentially then the folder that we want to sync. Same as before, this time we're being targeted, so we just want the documents and everything underneath it. We want to go to Procore. So again, regardless of the system that we're connecting to, the process is always the same. So it's a familiar selection process. And for the copy options, same as before, we want to only copy modified or new, but the stakeholder also wants to be able to track change. So we can enable versioning. So that means it won't create multiple copies of the same file. It's going to maintain one file at the destination and version that file. So with that in place, same as before, we could wait for the schedule to kick in, or I can just run it on demand, and we'll see that that data gets synced across. So it's reading the source, checking the destination. If there's already data at the destination, it'll see if it matches. And we can see the sync is started. If I refresh Procore, the folders are being created. If I refresh again, you'll see the files are in place. So again, really simple, very similar to the previous example, but we have a slight difference. We talked about the stakeholder wants to maintain versions. He needs to be able to track changes. So what we can do in this example is within Autodesk Docs, we can see we've got two documents, a proposal and a contract that are currently version 1. So we're going to update these documents. and you'll see that once they have been updated, they've changed to version 2. So slightly different this time. We're modifying files and we want to push that across. But in addition to that, we want a version. We want to maintain the versions of those files in Procore. So back in File Sync, we'll run this again. So it's going to do something slightly different this time. It's obviously going to check to see if the file has changed and then update and version that file. Same as before, we're being efficient in not having to sync all the data. It's going to skip everything that it needs to skip. And we can see it's completed. So we can see it skipped 8 files and it updated 2. If we take a look in Procore, there's no additional files. So we still have the same documents. But if we look at the info on these files, we'll see that we now have 2 versions. So in quick succession, we created a version at the destination. I then updated and ran again, and we have version 2. And that stakeholder now has visibility of those versions. They can track change. They can look at what the differences are in those documents. So we've been able to share a specific data set or folder, sync it frequently, and we've been able to give that stakeholder visibility of changes. So the third example is framed around backups. So for backups, in this example, the customer needs to back up a cloud project to Windows. And they need to be able to, during that backup process, filter out unnecessary files. So they want to make sure that they've always got a project available, should they have any issues, or from a compliance perspective, they need it on their servers. And they also want to ensure that that backup reflects the current cloud project structure. So they don't care what it looked like before. If the structure's changed, if files have changed, they don't want to see any of the legacy structural files. It has to be an exact match of that cloud project as it is today. And we can, again, facilitate that in File Sync. So as before, we'll just take a look at where we're going from and to. So we want to go to Windows. And when we're copying to Windows, we can go to a local drive. We can go to map drives. We can support network shares as well, so UNC paths. We have our backup location. So we want to copy this data across. We also want to make sure that if folders and files don't match, they're removed, which in this case, they don't match. So we're going to need some cleaning up to be done. And additionally, we talked about unnecessary files. So we always see that, some projects, they can get big. There's a lot of data in there, but some of that data might not be needed. It could be like in this example, we don't need these zip files. So anything that's a zip file, I don't need it. It could be that maybe we don't need the point cloud data or specific file formats. So we want to be able to make sure that we're not bringing down anything that's not needed by the business. Same again, we could contain this all within one project, but I'm just going to create a new one for the purpose of the demo. And again, we could schedule it to the interval that we feel is necessary to automate that synchronization. And all we're going to do is same as before, choosing where we want to go from, the project that we want to utilize, where we're going to. So I want the entire project. So we talked about we only want to sync the files that we care about. So we can filter which we haven't seen before. So with filter, we can specify specific file types that we care about. So maybe that I only want PDFs or Excel files or Word documents. So I can do that. I can be very targeted about the categorization of files that I want to sync. Maybe I only need AutoCAD and Revit. I can specify that. Or I could do an exclusion. So maybe it's specific files that I want to exclude. So in this example, I want to exclude zip files. So this is customizable. You can create your own categories. You can create your own file types. We could also skip files based on their size. So as I say, there can be big data sets that may be unnecessary that you don't need to bring across, and you could filter those out as well. So we're choosing where we want to go to. And we also talked about it has to be an exact match. So we can delete files from the destination. So if it doesn't match the source, it's going to remove them. Same as before. If we put it on the left, we've got file sync. On the right, we've got our backup location. So if we run this, it's going to do the same thing. It does its preliminary checks, checks what's at the source, checks what is at the destination, and based on the settings that we've configured, it's going to perform the operation. So in this example, you're going to see it cleaning up the folders and files at the backup location, and then it starts backing up all that data. So we can see old folders are removed, old files, new folders are in place with the files, and you can see that the zip files have been excluded from the backup. So we've been able to back up a project, we've been able to facilitate filtering out unnecessary data, and we've ensured that it is an exact match of our cloud project. Now, the last example is just a really quick one to run through, but we often see from customers, they need to be able to track sync history for compliance monitoring. So whether that's down to internal policies or standards like ISO 19650. So as part of that process, they want to be able to quickly filter and examine logs to see if there are any problems and to understand what they've shared. And potentially they want to leverage these logs in other platforms. So they need to have something that they can access from our side to be able to visualize on another platform. So to some extent, we've seen some element of compliance or monitoring. We have our activity page, but we also have a logs page. So the logs page captures everything that's ever run for any project and any sync. So we can view all of the projects from historical. We can filter specific projects. We can filter specific syncs for a project, or we could just view everything, like in this example. We have a status page, so it will show us if there are any problems or any warnings, any errors that occurred, and anything that completed. And we get little tooltips, and it will give us some feedback. We also get info like the size of the transfer package, where we were going from and to, the folders, how long it took to sync, when it was initiated, when it finished, and on what date. And if we select any row, we can then visualize that log. If we only care about certain pieces of information, like maybe we want to just look at files that were skipped, we can boil that down to what we care about. So show me all the files that we skipped, or show me all the files that we uploaded. So we can get it down to what we see as necessary. Additionally, the logs are in JSON format. So we can view these logs, or they could be shared with another platform. That platform can utilize that log to visualize that data. So that completes the demonstration. The only other point I wanted to make was, we've shown a lot of examples of migrating, collaborating, backing up, compliance. All of the connections that we support relate to all of these use cases. So the functionality that I've shown you, the workflows that I've shown you, it works for any of those connections in any direction.
Great. Thanks for that, Stuart. So hopefully we've shown you how intuitive and user-friendly our system is. And as Stuart went through there, looking at those use cases and applying the technology to those cases. So hopefully you found it all valuable today and worthwhile sitting on. There's been some questions that we've been going through. I've been trying my best to answer some of them. Probably a good opportunity while I've got Stuart to just cover a couple. Antonio said, is it only project by project that we sync?
Currently, yes, although we are looking to add a feature where you can select multiple projects. So we'll be adding functionality in where you can actually select multiple folders and potentially multiple projects for syncing. And for the product, it has a built-in updater, so we're pushing updates out every 1 month to 2 months. But yeah, I'll be happy to reach out to you and have a chat about what the roadmap looks like and when that feature will be available.
Thanks, Stuart. Paul said, once files are synced, does it show the most latest version? We covered that in the demo.
Yeah.
The latest version is there. Stephen Marshall, is metadata transferred with the file?
No, it's not something we currently support. Again, something that we're planning on adding to the product. So it is on our roadmap, but it's not in the product today.
Cool. Philip raised a good question. Are there any platforms that can't be synced? So we support ACC BIM 360, SharePoint, OneDrive, Procore, and Windows. There are other systems that we can potentially connect to. If there is a connector to Windows that we pass through. So it's a case of just taking a look, but the native ones that we do support are the ones that we've said on there. Alex raised a good question. Is there a limit on how many projects on ACC that can be synced? At the same time, are there any limits on amount of data size to be copied over? So there are no real limits set in place in terms of the projects that you want to sync. However, when it comes to data, we try to keep it as open as we can, although there is a fair use clause in place. So I think it's around 6 terabytes for the year, broken down into 3 terabytes every 6 months. If you feel you're going to go over that volume of data, then have a chat with us. We can have a look at a plan that probably suits you more so. Richard asks, can we sync to B2 or Azure?
So Azure, if it's a Windows operating system or network share or a map drive, we can sync to it, but we don't have any connectors to Azure storage currently.
Cool. Thank you very much. That is all the questions. So if anybody does have any other questions, please feel free to ask. We've got quite a few of you on the webinar today, which is great. I've already seen a question there on pricing, but if you would like us to reach out to you, would you like to know a little bit more about File Sync, for example, pricing? Just let us know, gives us a bit of visibility, and one of our colleagues can reach out to you and give you that necessary information that you need. So if you would like one of us to reach out, please do. We will all send you a recording of this afterwards anyway, so you've got that to hand. if you want a demo for your colleagues or anything like that, just ask us. We're more than happy to do that also for you. And then finally, the last item of the day, there is a trial download as well. So if you click on that link, you will be able to get access to a 15-day free trial. There is some caps on there in terms of number of projects, number of files, file size, etc. But it will give you a good feel for the application. As we've mentioned, it's really intuitive. You'll be able to download this. You'll be able to move some files about. So if you would like to have a go on the trial, download that. Again, we will send you an email afterwards with a link to download anyway. So don't worry if you can't jump on it straight now. We will follow that up after. And that brings us to the end. So I'd just like to thank everybody for jumping on. I hope it's been worthwhile your time. I hope you like the File Sync product. And if any of you have any questions, or the download, then feel free to reach out. But we will follow up with an email anyway. Thank you very much.
Thanks.